This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into. So let's just jump into it. First question comes from Evan, who says this: thoughts on Jaden Maeva from USC this year? I've been watching him all year and think he deserves to be in the top 3 QBs in the draft this year. He has timing and anticipation you want to see from other quarterbacks, seems to be removing themselves from the convo. I don't know if I like Jaden Maeva. I'll say that. I like Jaden, but I don't think I'm going to put Jaden in the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. The reason I'm not going to put Jaden there is there still seems to be a lot of questions about how much drive he can get on that football right now. His stuff that he does really well is the touch stuff, and I think he shows a lot of balls on 3rd and long and on 3rd down, and, there's something to be said about a player who can actually get the ball to his playmakers at the quarterback position, which is a skill set that I think a lot of people take for granted, right? Like, this is something that I think it took Baker Mayfield's game to a next level once he understood how to get the ball to his playmakers, and he's not trying to spread the ball out with like Davis, but Taylor Gabriel and everybody else instead of just getting the ball to Odell Beckham, right? And in Tampa, he figured out, hey, I'm just going to throw this ball to Mike Evans a lot. There's something to be said about having that ability to understand, hey, he's a playmaker. I'm going to look for him. I'm going to get the ball to him without being somebody who locks in on that playmaker to the point to where it's easy to strategize against him. I think there's something there in him, but I think it's in that same brand of, like, if you liked Will Howard last year, you might like Jaden Maeva, right? Like, he's going to be in that same class that you would look at somebody like him, right? 3rd, 4th round class. Maybe if he has an excellent season, USC gets to the playoffs, you can talk yourself into late 1st round with him. But top 3 of the quarterbacks this year, I don't know if he's going to be able to get there unless he starts to demonstrate a dramatic uptick in arm strength. I like him a lot. I like quarterbacks with moxie. I like quarterbacks who can put touch on the ball and fit into nice windows and, really attack downfield, aren't afraid and know how to get the ball to their best players. But also, you got to factor in, some of the physical tools that you're looking from him aren't there. Even though I think as an athlete, he's a much better athlete than people are giving him credit for right now. You know what I mean? But yeah, Jaden Maeva, he's an interesting guy. We'll see if he comes out. He's kind of like right now hovering in that, there was like that bunch of quarterbacks, Will Howard, Dillon Gabriel, right? We found out that Shador was in this class of quarterbacks amongst the NFL GMs. He kind of sits there in my opinion, but he's a guy that's interesting. I like him, young guy too. Not the oldest guy too. Cody says, given the circumstances, overseas game, Brian Flores defense, what would you consider to be a good game or stat line for Dillon Gabriel's first start? I'm not going to really use a stat line to describe what I feel like a good start for Dillon would be. For Dillon, a good start would be simply, do the Browns have a chance to win this game in the 4th quarter? Right, with you at the late part of the 4th quarter, do the Browns have a chance to put this game away or win this game? If the Browns are in that position in the 4th quarter, I consider it a success. If the Browns aren't in that position, then that'd be a failure, right? Because that's been the one hurdle the Browns haven't been able to get over in these games that they've lost, right? They've gotten blown out of proportion by the time you get to the end of the 4th. Well, by the time you get to that final part of the 4th quarter, right? Not the Green Bay game, but the game against Baltimore got away from you, and the game the game last week got away from you in the late part of the 4th quarter as well. So if we're able to avoid that, get down to the 2-minute marker, still have a real chance to win this game, then, you know, you're going to look at Dillon and say, fine enough, right? Not going to throw a parade for him and, you know, do a celebration and cut open the cake for him or anything because he does that. But if he can get to that point, that would be an improvement from where we were and a good baseline to start from and hope for more improvement as he gets more reps as the season goes on. All right, we got a question here from 1180 Elvis, who says, is it possible for Cleveland to start Cam Robinson if they run more of a vanilla offense? He's a vet and should not need as much time to acclimate. I don't know about that logic, but before I get into that, I'm going to take time out to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Hey, what's up? We've been talking about that new promo that Sleeper has been doing, $20, no deposit required. Also, the same, get 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Still works. But I want to go over my picks with y'all so we can see if these things are going to come true. I feel pretty strongly about them. We'll track them throughout the game and have a little fun that way. Just a little $5 wager here to get $35 if I am correct, so we can win this contest here. So Carson Wentz, they think that Carson Wentz is not going to throw an interception in this game. I think Carson Wentz will throw an interception. Dillon Gabriel is a new member to the pick party here, so we're going to throw Dillon Gabriel in here. They think he's not going to get over 178 yards. I think he will get over 178 yards. Sometimes we assume that the Browns aren't going to throw the ball a ton. They're not going to throw the ball. They're going to run the ball a million times. And if we get to the game and they throw the ball 40 times, it happens almost every time. Even if they run the ball a ton, they will throw the ball more than people think. They will try to use the passing offense more than people think because they're just going to have to, right? They're not dynamic enough with the run game to where they can get away with it. On top of that, that's why I have Quincy Judkins here, who they don't think is going to get a lot of receiving yards this week. I'm going to give him 13.5 over that. The reason I think he's going to get more than 13.5 receiving yards, I think is very simple. Quincy is going to be on the field a lot. Dillon is going to throw more than people think. And Dillon's going to check the ball down a good amount because that's what he did while he was out there. He did a good job checking the ball down. So I think he'll get the ball out and check the ball down. Jordan Mason is somebody that thinks is going to get about 17.5 attempts in this game. I think the Browns will keep him under 17.5 attempts. But those are my picks. If you want to join the fun, join Sleeper. Get a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Also, they're doing a free $20 entry right now. So $20, no deposit required, and you still get the 100% deposit match on up to $100. Join Sleeper today. Y'all have a great day. So 1180 Elvis's question about Cam Robinson. Here's the big dilemma that the Browns are going to run up against and why I think it is not very likely that if they aren't comfortable with where Cam Robinson is, with where he needs to be with the protections, that they're going to stick with him this week at least. The main reason is this. You're playing a Brian Flores defense. What Brian Flores is going to do is called sim pressure. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term sim pressure, it's basically you bring a bunch of guys to the line of scrimmage. You make it look like 10 guys are going to blitz, but you drop 6 of them back and 4 of them end up going towards the quarterback. And the goal of this is to try to confuse the offensive line into being into the wrong protection so that you can effectively blitz without blitzing. When I say blitz, by the way, it means sending a extra rusher, right? You usually send 4. If you send 5, that's a blitz. The reason being is that you're blitzing the offensive line, sometimes with 6 guys, 5 guys, more guys than the offensive line can handle. The reason it's called a sim pressure is that if you confuse the offensive line sufficiently to the point to where they have slide, right? And then you send 3 people to the part of the line where they only slid 2 guys over, then you effectively were able to blitz the offensive line without blitzing the offensive line, simulating the pressure. So that is a staple of what Brian Flores wants to do. What he wants to do is take advantage of miscommunication on the offensive line. Now, if you're adding a new offensive lineman into the rotation, that's going to be a big shining red flag for Brian Flores to say, hey, I'm going to test the communication on that side. Now, you do have Joe Bitonio on the left side, so you might feel a little bit more confident with the veteran in Joe's ability to figure it out. And that might be why Cam Robinson does start this week. But I can understand the hesitation because, it's not like you need to make the offense vanilla because Cam Robinson is out there. But you do need to simplify the protections for the offense, which could be a heavier lift than what most people kind of assume. So, yeah, for the Browns to start Cam Robinson this week, it's going to take a remarkable week of practice for Cam Robinson, and I don't know if that's how that's gone for them. I wouldn't expect him just because this week of all weeks, you want as little miscommunication on the offensive line as possible. So I don't know if Cam's going to be the guy they go to, that they feel like they have the best chance to have the least amount of miscommunication with, but we'll see. We'll see. This is not a preferable week. Hopefully Jack Conklin, practicing full leads to him playing in this game. I think that will be very helpful for them as well. Another guy with a lot of experience in this offensive line. Dog Watch says, with Gabriel starting in London, do you think the game plan will be run, or some tight end passes, or will they open up the offense more than they have in the past weeks? I think they'll run the regular offense. I think they'll run the regular offense. I think Dillon's going to throw the ball a normal amount of time. I don't think the way that they structure the offense is going to be that different than how they structured the offense with Flacco. I think what they're hoping changes is the execution in the offense at the quarterback position, which has not been good with Flacco. There's been opportunities there for plays to be made multiple times in the last couple of weeks. I've pointed them out on film. So, Dillon goes out there with the same kind of approach that the Browns have had. There are going to be opportunities there. The problem has been that Joe Flacco, for whatever reason, just has not been able to identify those answers and get the ball out, to those answers. So I think that's really what they're hoping changes this week, not necessarily an entire change to the offense. KS07 says, who has more potential to take the Browns to the next level within the next 5 to 10 years, Dillon or Shedeur? I honestly don't know the answer to that because, it feels like we have a more complete picture on Dillon Gabriel than we do with Shedeur. With Shedeur, the picture that we do have doesn't necessarily compel me to put him in a conversation of 5 to 10 years quarterback changers. Like, both of these guys are not first-round picks, not second-round picks, and the expectation for them is not to be, the answer to the Browns' problem at quarterback, right? With both of these guys, you can reasonably be happy if they become transition starters or backups. So I don't even know if this is a fair question to ask or answer for either of these guys, because right now, for what we know, I don't think any of these guys are going to be, the next, take the Browns to the next level in the next 5 to 10 years. And I don't even think the Browns are anticipating that either of these guys are going to do that. Now, if we get surprised, and somebody shows us something later, then cool. We can have this conversation. But having it right now, I think is just setting a pretext that's unfair. Like, I don't think that's the expectation for either of them. Other than QB, what do you think the Browns should take with one of their top picks that we have in 2026? What areas do we need to truly build? I am going to hammer this home every time I get a question about positions and in the draft. The Browns' focus in the draft it should not be for any specific positions over getting players that they think are going to be really good. Find the playmakers in the draft, and then find the playmakers that fit best for what your needs are. But don't go into a draft saying we need a quarterback, we're going to draft a quarterback, we're going to take any quarterback that we can get. Don't go into the draft saying we need a left tackle, we're going to draft any left tackle we can get. identify the playmakers. And if one of those playmakers is a quarterback, take them. If one of those playmakers is a left tackle, take them. But draft good players. A draft pick is meaningless unless you use it on a good player. So prioritize that first, and then we can worry about the position stuff later. The next question comes from Bowler, who says this. So Q, I have always felt like Shador's best comp is Kirk Cousins. Similar measurables, considerable arms, accurate QBs who elevated mediocre college program. Kirk was the first in that small run that Michigan State had as a bowl contender. Average athletes prone to big negative sacks. Kirk was a 4th round pick, by the way, not a 3rd round pick. It was a 4th round pick. Do we think that Sanders dropping to the 5th because of the loud attention he brings as a backup, pretty well proven in media, is warranted if we look at his draft stock through that lens? Well, I think the NFL valued Shador at about a 4th round pick. I think that's what we found out, right? Because the Ravens tried to take him in the 4th round. I think the Eagles were having conversations about taking him in the 4th round. The Browns tried to trade back into the 4th round to get him after they got Dylan Sampson. So I think the NFL valued him at around a 4th round pick, which is similar to Kirk Cousins. I think there is the question of like, hey, if this guy's not going to start for you, do you really want to deal with some of the stuff that comes with him that's not really his fault? And I think that's part of it. I don't think that's all of it. I think that's a bigger factor for fans than it is for head coaches and GMs. Because honestly, a good head coach and GM should be able to compartmentalize and ignore this kind of stuff that's part of the job description. Like, I don't think it's a great sign if your GM gets caught up in the public discourse. Like, that's not usually what you want your GM to do. That's not something you saw Ozzie Newsome doing, right? So, yeah, I tend to think that those kind of factors are bigger deals for fans than they are for teams in the NFL. I think part of it might be what you said, is that they did see his skill set and said, it looks like, Kirk Cousins Jr. And they kind of valued him about the same as Kirk Cousins was valued coming out of college. Now, it is worth noting that Kirk Cousins' college career, you can argue, was a little bit more impressive than Shador's, because Kirk, was in the Big Ten. Big Ten, always a better conference than the Big 12, especially the version of the Big 12 that Shador played in, which was not very impressive. And with Kirk Cousins, there are multiple big-time wins under his belt in college. And Shador Sanders, one of the biggest criticisms you can have of him is that in college, like, what's his big-time win, over a big-time ranked opponent? Like, I know people try to act like TCU was good the year that Shador beat him, but the fact is the TCU ended that season, I don't even believe they were bowl eligible, right? That's the big win for Shador in college. Maybe the Baylor game is the big win for him. Another team that I'm not 100% sure was or was not bowl eligible, right? But when you look at his big ranked games and the biggest gains of his career in college, whether it be FCS or FBS, right? He lost both the Celebration Bowls while he was at Jackson. He doesn't really have a big win under his belt. Kirk Cousins beat Ohio State when he was at Michigan State. Now, it was the 2011 year where everybody was beating Ohio State, but he still beat Ohio State. He got to a not national championship. He got to a Big Ten championship game, and he played in 2 major bowl games throughout his career. So I think you can make a pretty strong argument that Kirk's college career was better than Shador's. I know people are going to bring up stats and try to compare it stat for stat, but Kirk played, Mike D'Antonio offense. It's a different era. Those stats just aren't going to be that gaudy, as like a college spread offense like Shador played in. But yeah, Kirk Shador, I think it's a decent comp. It's better than some of the other comps that I've heard of him. I think he tends to be more along the lines of maybe like Teddy, right? Tua. Again, these are people who had better college careers than Shador. But it's kind of like he feels like in that same vein. But yeah, I wouldn't say that's terrible. You know what I mean? The next one comes from Mike, who says, "What's up, Q? Why do you think Joe lost that gunslinger mentality? Obviously, he's older, but man, that would make throws with no hesitations. He looked like a rookie playing his first game, afraid to make a mistake. I think a lot of this had to do with the constant pressure he was dealing with, just rattling his decision making, because now you're trying to adjust for the fact that your right tackle is giving up an historic amount of pressures, right? And that causes you to change your process. And once your process is changed, then all of a sudden you're not seeing the field as well. And then once you're not seeing the field as well, well, then you're not as confident in what you're doing. And when you're not as confident in what you're doing, it's pretty hard to be a gunslinger. Like, these things kind of domino and stack on top of each other, right? And that's kind of how we got to where he got to, whereas I think the offensive line being bad had a bad effect on him, and then he made some decisions that to try to compensate for that ended up making things even worse, and then so on and so forth, and then it just becomes a bad habit sandwich that leads to bad quarterback play. That's what separates the great quarterbacks from the rest of the quarterbacks, is that, when a great quarterback's dealing with the issue, they don't fall into that spiral, right? They're able to find answers for the fact that their tackle is giving up 28 pressures and all that. Joe, he's not that guy, right? So I think that was kind of the source that led to the stacking of larger problems that Joe Flacco is ultimately responsible for, that, got his play to look how it looked. Cleveland Sports Central says, can Dillon realistically do anything this season to cement himself as the Browns' long-term QB guaranteed? Yeah, he can either go to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. He does that, and yeah, he'll be the starter for forever. But, maybe get to a conference championship game, right? Like, I think some people would be willing to say we're going to go all the way if he gets to the second round, but I've seen the Browns move on from quarterbacks that they've gotten to the second round with, so wouldn't be 100% confident there. Like, if Dillon Gabriel as the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns at any point this year makes you think we can win a championship with him, and then they get to the playoffs and they almost win a championship with Dillon Gabriel, then they will stick with Dillon Gabriel. If anything other than that happens, they will look to make sure that they are surrounding this team or putting this team in the best position to succeed at quarterback long term. Hayseed says, non-Browns related, but what are your thoughts on the NFL making a commitment going back to natural grass fields? FIFA made a commitment years ago to cut down on injuries. It has worked. The data is in. Knee, foot, ankle injuries are up significantly, and I like to see the NFL and new Brown Stadium carry natural grass. Yeah, I mean, like, here's where I am with natural grass stadiums. If you're building something new, it might as well take into account a way to get natural grass, right? Like, if you're going to build a new $800 million, you might as well have natural grass in there, right? Like, that just makes sense. Like, something like MetLife Stadium has always baffled me that doesn't have natural grass in it. That's so stupid, right? Like, the Buffalo's new stadium should have natural grass. If you're building a new stadium like the Browns are, then I think steps should be made during the design process to make sure that you're able to do natural grass if at all possible. Now, that might become tricky, right? Because everywhere I hear, because you hear this often where people go like, hey, Arizona has that neat little slide out system. I think Los Angeles does too. And then people think that you could do that in Cleveland. But the truth is that, Arizona and Los Angeles gets way more sun than Cleveland does. So, and even they struggle to grow that grass because that grass is always kind of funky, right? Like, it's always like extra slippery. There's always complaints about it. So maybe the ideal of like growing grass indoors, maybe we think the technology is there, but it's not really as matured as we want it to be. But yeah, if you're building a new stadium and the technology is there, like most people are assuming, then you should consider it. But, if it's like the Superdome, I don't want the Superdome doing all the ridiculous bullshit you have to do to be able to grow grass inside a closed building that's necessary in order to like get the natural grass. Like, yeah, do I like players' comfort? Sure. Like, players' comfort is important. You want players to have as little injuries as possible. I do think the effect that natural grass has on that data is a bit overblown and overstated. I don't think people consider for the fact that every other level of football now plays on turf, and those injuries also spiking up at that level. Like, I think we're kind of just using natural grass as this catch-all magic pill, and I think not enough real research. Like, I think it's either been players doing research on it or the NFLPA doing research on it because they want to prove a point that natural grass is cleaner, or the owners getting these biased studies made because they want to prove that turf isn't that bad. But I don't think any independent people have looked at this enough to really get a good answer there. But like the amount of resources that you have to dedicate, and I'm not just talking about money, right? We're talking about energy, right? When, like, let's face it, like, everybody's energy bill has gone up based on, all this stuff that they're doing with AI and these new data centers and crypto and all this stuff has made, people in America's energy prices go way up over the last few years. And I don't want an NFL team trying to recreate the sun in the dome of a stadium, taxing the energy grid even more, making energy prices more expensive for the average person, just so we can get some natural grass. So, the NFL players feel a little bit more comfortable when they get tackled in the Superdome. You're building something new, and you could take advantage of out the nature in the sun to grow some grass in your stadium. I think that should be mandated. You shouldn't be able to You shouldn't be able to build an outdoor stadium that doesn't have natural grass. And if you can build a dome stadium in your area that can grow grass indoors, I think you should be mandated to do so. As far as like forcing teams that don't have that infrastructure to do it, that's where I have more. I think people aren't really thinking about the entire negative impact of using that many resources to try to recreate the sun indoors so that NFL players can have natural grass on the field. Like, I don't know. Feels a bit crazy to me, but that's my stance on it. Like, I get it. I get why the push should be there. If we're building new stuff, eventually every stadium will be at that point. But if we're talking about whether you should grandfather in certain venues to that policy, I think you should. I think you should grandfather in other venues to that policy and then wait till new stadiums are made to get that to all 32. Because I just don't think on some of these strategies I've seen, the energy cost is just too significant, and we're very close to an energy crisis. It feels like with the way that everybody's electricity bill has shot up, and that's just keeping it real with you. Like, everybody's feeling that right now. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Take it for as what you want to. But that's it. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.